Hello, third graders. We are here together today to work on math lesson 14. So if you have your materials in front of you, you will have lesson 14. You can get a highlighter if you want to, if we want to highlight the numbers that are in the hundreds place today, because that's what we're rounding to. But you don't need a highlighter for sure today because it doesn't look like we're looking at word problems, but it's always handy just to have a highlighter ready for math. Okay, so if we look at our math lesson 14 today, our objective is that we're going to be rounding to the nearest 100 on the vertical number line. So if we remember yesterday, we were also rounding on a vertical number line. So remember, vertical just means up and down. So a vertical number line looks like that. And just to recap real quickly what we did yesterday. So yesterday we had our number line, and let's say that we wanted to round 47 to the nearest 10. That's what we were doing yesterday. We were rounding to the nearest 10. So our job was to decide what two tens was 47 in between. What do you think? What two tens is 47 in between? 40 and 50. And what would I put right in the middle between 40 and 50? What goes right there? 45. Good job. And then we want to think, where would 47 go? Would it go above 45, closer to the 50, or below 45, closer to the 40? What do you think? It goes above 45, right? So it actually goes two above. So I'm at 45, 46, 47. So I would stick it right about there. So, and that makes it obviously closer to the 50. So 47 rounds to about 50. That's a recap of what we did yesterday. So today it is very similar, but today we are rounding to the nearest 100. Okay, so yesterday we were looking at the number in the tens place. Today we're looking at the number in the hundreds place. I can round to the nearest 100. So I'm going to do a practice one before we start our lesson today. If I take 147, so I'm keeping that 47 that we had right here, and I'm just going to add 100 right in front of it, okay? So I have 147. Which number is in the hundreds place? The 1. So if I'm going to round to the nearest 100, I'm going to underline that 1. And then let's practice putting it on a vertical number line. So you can do this right along with me. You can watch whatever you want to do. Put my top and my bottom tick marks. So now that we're rounding to the nearest 100, I'm looking at the number in the hundreds place, which is a 1. And I want to think, what two hundreds is 147 in between? So a way to remember this is that if it's a number in the hundreds, or if we're rounding, we want to know which two hundreds is it between. It's going to have a number and it's going to end in 0, 0. A number and 0, 0. Because here's a common mistake that kids do. They'll say, okay, it's between 140 and 150. But are 140 and 150, are those two hundreds? That would be if we were rounding to the nearest tens, right? We'd be going 140 and 150 because 147 would be between those two tens. So to see what two hundreds 147 is between, well, I know it's between 100. That would be the lowest number. And then if I go 100 above 100, it would be 200, right? So 100 more than 100 would be 200. So 147 is between 100 and 200. So if you're ever not sure of the starting point, it's going to be this number right there. Okay, so we've got 147. So the lowest number, the lowest 100, we're going to use that 100 there. So it would be 100. And then we just need to go up one more 100, which would give us 200. What's right in the middle of 100 and 200? 150, right? 150. Good. So now we want to plot 147 on this number line. Would 147 be above 150 or would it be below 150? It's below 150, right? I'm going to stick it right about there because it's pretty close to the 150. So since it's below 150, that means it's going to round down to 100. So 147 rounds to about 100. And remember, yesterday, the last time that we met and did math together, those little squiggly lines mean about, that it rounds to about that number. Okay, that's what we're working on today. So if you don't have your problem set in front of you, go ahead and grab that now and show me you're ready. Okay, name and date on your paper. Our directions say to round to the nearest 100, use the number line to model your thinking. If you just want to do the first one with me, and then if you want to go off on your own, you can, or you can stick with me for a few and then go off on your own. But if you go off on your own, does that mean that you just do them all and then you are done with them? You need to come back and check, right? So even if you feel really, really confident in the work that you did, I want you to come back. You can fast forward it. Like if you are watching it and you got it correct, then just kind of breeze through and fast forward to the next one, right? But make sure that you're checking at least to see if your work is correct. Okay, so the first one we had is 143. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite it right here to make it a little bit bigger. So 143, which number is in the hundreds place? The 1. So I'm going to underline the 1 because that's my 100. So remember, I told you that the number that we underline, the number in that hundreds place, is going to be the lowest, is going to be the bottom number, right, on our number line. So it would be 1, and then these two numbers right here would become zeros. So it's between 100, and then if I go up another 100, it's between 100 and 200. Good. And right in between, they already did that work for us. Right in between 100 and 200 is 150. So they did that. So now it's our job to decide, does 143, is that less than 150 or is it more than 150? It is less, right? So we don't need to like count out tick marks, but we know that it's kind of close to 150. So I'm going to stick it right out there. So 143. We can put the point right there for 143. And once we've done that, we can now see that since 143 is less than 150, that it's going to round down to 100, right? So 143 rounds to about 100. Okay, is everyone good with that? Okay, if we look at the next one, 286, I'm going to rewrite it. I just like to have it a little bit bigger so I can underline the number in my hundreds place. Which number is in our hundreds place of 286? The 2, right? So I know that since 2 is in the hundreds place, that's going to be my lowest 100. So I'm going to put the 2 right there. And then what 2 numbers do I need after it? Zeros. You got it. So the 8 and the 6 are going to become zeros because remember, we're rounding to the nearest 100. So therefore, those become zeros. So if this is 200, what comes next? What is 1 more than 200 if I go up another 100? 300. Super duper. And then what would be right in the middle between 200 and 300? And if we're not sure, we can look over here. Between 100 and 200, right in the middle, we had 150. So it would be 250. Nice work. All right, and now we want to plot 286 on our vertical number line. So if we think 286, is that more than 250? Or is that less than 250? It's more, right? So I'm going to stick that right about there, put a point there, and I'm going to fill in 286. This doesn't need to be exact there, as long as we're showing on our number lines that we know that 286 is more than 250. Okay, so now it's really easy for us to see on this number line that 286 is closer to 200 or 300. Definitely 300, right? So that means that 286 rounds to about 300. What do we think? Okay, if you haven't tried any on your own yet, go ahead and try C on your own. And then if you look at D, I'm going to just point out D real quick. What's different with D? D has a number in the thousands place, right? But we can see that this is 320 and this is 320. So if you want to try that one, you can. But I definitely want you to try C on your own if you haven't tried any yet. You can give D a try too and then come back and check with me, okay? So pause it, and if you haven't worked independently yet, definitely try C. Okay, so I'm hoping that you worked at least on C on your own and that you're back and checking with me. So I'm going to rewrite 320, and we're rounding to the nearest 100. So which number's in the hundreds place? The 3, right? And so I know that when I'm filling in my number line, my smallest 100, the 100 down at the bottom here, I know it's going to begin with a 3. And these two numbers are going to be zeros, right? These two numbers here became zeros. All right. So if that's 300, then what's going to go up top? One more 300 plus another 100 is 400. Good. And what did you put right in the middle? Between 300 and 400, did you put 350? Good. So then if we're going to plot 320, we need to say to ourselves, is 320 below 350 or is it above 350? It would be below, right? So I'm going to stick it right about there, plot my point, and put 320. And then as I'm looking at that and I'm deciding, is 320 closer to 300 or closer to 400? It is definitely closer to 300. It's very easy for me to see that there, right? So 320 rounds to about 300. Can you give me a thumbs up if you have that correct? Good. So if you tried D on your own, let's take a look. And then if not, you can work with me, and then I'll have you try one of these next two on your own that have the thousands in it, okay? So for D, I'm going to rewrite it because I like just a bit a little bigger, 1,320. Okay, now remember, we're rounding to the nearest 100. So it doesn't mean that we just would put it between 1,000 and 2,000, right? Because that would be to the nearest 1,000. We want the nearest 100. So it would still be the 3 that's in my hundreds place, right? So here's the thing. When I'm filling in the 200s that it's between, I'm going to stick the 1 in the thousands place because we're not doing anything with that number in the thousands place. It's just there, right? We're not changing that number in the thousands place. It's there. So the 3 is still going to stay a 3 because remember we put that as our lowest. So 1,300. Same thing here. This is 320. So we said that the lowest number, the 200 that's between, is 300 and 400. So now we have 1,320. The 200s that it's between is 1,300. What would this one be up here? 1,400. And then what goes right in the middle there? 1,350. Look, 300, 300. We just added the 1,000 in front of it. 350, 350. We just added the 1,000 in front of it. 400, 400. We just added the 1,000 in front because that was the change here, right? We added the 1,000. So 1,320, it's still going to be right about there, right? So 1,320. And that would make it closer to 1,300, right? 1,300. So a lot of times we get a little bit confused. Some kids do because we're just throwing that 1,000 in front of it. So you could even pretend like that 1,000 is not there and you could go in and add it in after. I'm going to show you the next one. What I mean by that is if we're just pretending that 1,000 is not there for a minute. I'm going to write 1,572. And then I'm going to cover up that number in the thousands place. So that gives me 572, right? So if I think what 200s is 572 in between, well, this is my 100, right? So I want to underline that. So what would I write for my number down here? 500 at the bottom. So it's between 500 and 600 if I go up 100. And what would be between there? Between 500 and 600? 550. You are good. Now that I have that, now I need to remember to do this, right? Uncover that, and there's that 1,000. Now I'm going to stick that 1,000 back in there. Do you see what I did there? Because sometimes just having that extra number in there is confusing to some kiddos, and we want to maybe round to the nearest 1,000, or we want to do different things because that's just throwing us off. So if we just cover it up and pretend that it's not even there, because we're rounding to the nearest 100, right? We're not doing anything with that 1,000. So if I just pretend that that's not there for a minute, label my number line without my thousands, then I can go back and stick that 1,000 thereafter. Does that make sense? Okay. So 1,572, would that be below 1,550 or above 1,550? It would be above. It's bigger than 1,550. So I'm going to stick it right about there. 1,572. And that makes it closer to which 100? 1,600. What do you think? Will you try this next one on your own? If you did this one with me, you can remember the trick that we did. So if we do 1,250, go ahead and cover up that 1,000 and fill in your number line. Just make sure that you go back and you add that 1,000 in after, okay? So pause your video and go ahead and solve this one on your own. Okay, so I'm hoping that you saw this one on your own and that you're back with me. Let's check it out. So 1,250, and my last direction was to cover up that 1,000. So we're rounding to the nearest 100. So I'm going to underline the 2 because the 2 is in the hundreds place. And then I say to myself, what 2 hundreds is 250 in between? Well, there's my first 100 right there, right? So this would be 200. Give me a thumbs up if you put 200 there. Okay. And then it would be between 200 and 300. Give me a thumbs up if you put 300 there. Good. And what did you put right in the middle there? Did you put 250? Awesome. All right. And then we had to go back and put, though, because I was covering up my 1,000, right? So now I need to go back and add that 1,000 in. Just don't forget that. If you don't need to use that cover up trick, if you feel perfectly fine and you've totally got that down, then don't worry about it. But if it's a little bit confusing, which it is a lot of times confusing to third graders, once we throw that extra 1,000 in there. So that's a good trick to use. Okay. We just have to remember to add our 1,000 back in after. Okay. So 1,250, there it is, right? It's right there. So we had one like this yesterday, our last math class together. When it's right in the middle, do we round up or do we round down? We're going to round up. Remember, 5 or above, give it a shove. So since it's 1,250, here's the number in the hundreds place. And then I look right after it, which is a 5. So that's my helper number. 5 or above, give it a shove. So this 2 becomes a 3, and these numbers become zeros. So it rounds up to 1,300. We're going to practice that little poem on the next side, okay? So once you are all set with this page, you can go ahead and flip it over. If you need to pause it and go back and review anything, or just to finish up, you can pause it and do that as well. And then join me on the back when you're ready. Okay, so on the back, it says to complete the chart, A says Shauna has 480 stickers. Round the number of stickers to the nearest 100. So we have 480. We want to round it to the nearest 100. Which number is in the hundreds place? The 4. So we're going to practice saying our little poem together, okay? So the number 4 is in the hundreds, so I'm going to look right after it for my helper number, which is the 8. So I'm looking at the 8, and then I say 5 or above, give it a shove. Is this 8, 5 or above? Yes, it is. So that means I'm going to give the 4 a shove. So when I say give it a shove, it goes up higher, 1 to the next number. So the 4 becomes a 5, and then these two numbers become zeros. Okay, so 480 rounds to 500. Okay, so we underline the number in the hundreds place, which was 4. We put a dot under our helper number, which is an 8, and then I can say that poem to myself. 5 or above, looking at that 8, give it a shove. So since it was a 5 or higher, anytime it's a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, that's going to give this number a shove. And then this becomes the next number up, which is a 5. And then these two numbers become zeros because they're rounding to the nearest 100. Let's practice that some more. The next one says there are 525 pages in a book. Round the number of pages to the nearest 100. So 525. Okay. And this 5 is in the hundreds, right? So which is my helper number? The 2. So then I can look at that and I can say, is the 2 5 or above? It's 4 or below. So the second part of that is 4 or below, leave it alone. So 5 or above, give it a shove. 4 or below, leave it alone. And when we say leave it alone, we mean leave this 5 alone, right? So it's going to stay a 5, and then the 2 and the 5 become zeros. Okay? So this is another strategy that we're practicing right now. The front, we are practicing putting the numbers on a vertical number line. Okay? This is just another strategy that you can use. It's good to be able to think of them in terms of a number line, but just another strategy to have is to pay attention to which number place value we're rounding to, use the helper number right after it, and use that number to help us to decide what to do. Okay? C, a container holds 750 milliliters of water. Round the capacity to the nearest 100. Okay, so if you want to try this one on your own, we can definitely work this one out. So why don't you pause your video and give this one a try. Remember, we're rounding to the nearest 100, and put a dot under your helper number, and then you can say your plum. Okay, so give that one a shot. Okay, so if we're coming back, I'm hoping that you try that one on your own. We said 7 was the number in our hundreds place. So then we look at the 5, our helper number, and we can say our poem. 5 or above, give it a shove. So that means the 7 gets a shove. It's going to go up one higher number, which would be an 8. And then these two numbers become zeros. So remember, if we're rounding to the nearest 100, anytime we round to the nearest 100, our number's automatically going to end in 2 zeros. Okay? Good. The next one, we have two numbers, the next two actually, because I want you to test these out on your own. We have 1,000, it's dollars, 297, okay? And we want to round that to the nearest 100. So remember, this one has 1,000, so you could actually cover that one up and give it a shot, right? If you want to just look at that, make sure we add that 1,000 back in after. And the next one is we want to round 1,842 to the nearest 100. Okay, those are both to the nearest 100, nearest 100. Okay, so for both of these, they have a number in the thousands place. You can just cover that number, the thousands place up, pretend it's not there, and then just go back and add it in after. Okay, so pause and try to solve those two for me. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to come back. I'm hoping that you worked on those. So the first one, 1,297. So I'm going to cover up that 1. So I'm looking at the 2, and the number right after is my helper number. So I'm going to put a dot under the 9. Okay. And then I can say 5 or above, give it a shove. So I'm actually going to put my 1 back, my 1,000, because I'm not doing anything to that. That's just there, right? We said 5 or above, give it a shove. So that means the 2 gets a shove up one number to a 3. And these two numbers become zeros. 1,300, is that what you got? Good. And if not, I'm hoping that just going over it helps it to become a little bit more clear and we'll get the hang of it. All right. E, so we had 1,842 to the nearest 100. We underlined the 8, which is my helper number. The 4, right? I'm just going to stick that 1 right there right now so I don't forget it. And then I'm going to cover up the 1,000. I'm going to look at this, 842. So I have my 8 underlined. I look at my helper number. Is this a 5 or higher, 5 or above? No. 4 or below, leave it alone. So I leave the 8 alone, which means I'm not changing it. I'm leaving it alone. It's staying in 8. And then these two numbers become zeros. So that becomes 1,800. What do we think? Alrighty, let's move on. 3 says circle the numbers that round to 600 when rounding to the nearest hundred. So I want to look at all these numbers and say which one of these, which ones, because there's going to be more than one, round to 600 when I round them to the nearest hundreds. I want to round each one to the nearest hundred. So if I look at 527, I'm going to underline the 5 because that's the number in the hundreds, put a dot under the 2. That's my helper. So I'm going to look at it and say, is this 5 or above? 4 or below, leave it alone. So I'm leaving the 5 alone, and these two numbers become zeros. So does 527 round to 600? Nope, cross it out. 550, so underline the number that's in your hundreds place, which is that 5. Put a dot under the number right after, which is our helper, which is that other 5, right? So I'm looking here. I'm going to put my pen under that one, and I say 5 or above. 5 or above, give it a shove. So this number in the hundreds place gets a shove up one number. So it was a 5, it now becomes a 6. And these two numbers become zeros. So does this 550 round to 600? Sure does. I'm going to circle that whole thing right there. Okay, we'll do one more together if you have already started working off on your own, and then I'll have you do those last 3 on your own. So 639, nearest hundred, so I'm going to underline the 6, right, because the 6 is in the hundreds place. And then I'm going to put a dot under the 3 because the 3 is my helper number. And I'm going to point to that 3, and I'm going to say my rhyme. 5 or above? Nope, it's not a 5 or higher. 4 or below, leave it alone. So since this is, when I say 4 or below, I mean a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0. If it's a 4 or under, that means we leave the number that we underlined alone. 4 or below, leave it alone. So the 6 we left alone, it stays a 6. And these two numbers become zeros. So can we circle that one? Yes, because it stayed 600 or rounded to 600. So try these last 3 on your own if you're not already working independently, and then come back and check with me, okay? Okay, so if you're back with me, let's check and see how you did. So we had 681. 6 is in the hundreds, so I'm going to underline a 6, put a dot under the 8 as my helper. And then I can say my rhyme, 5 or above. It sure is. It's higher than a 5. It's an 8. 5 or above, give it a shove. So that means the 6 gets a shove. The next number up, one higher than a 6 would be a 7, and these two numbers become zeros. Can we circle that one? Because we're only circling numbers that round to 600, right? If they round to 600. So that one is a no. 713. Well, I already think I know this one, because if this is a 7 already, if it's a 7, can it go below the 700? No, because I'll just do this real quick. If I put a dot here after this one, 4 below, leave it alone, that still is going to stay a 7, and these become zeros. So that can't work, right? Because it has to be 600. So that's a no. Did you agree with that one? Okay, and then if I look at the very last one, 603, the 6 is in the hundreds place. Put a dot under the 0. That's my helper number. I'm going to point to my helper number and say the poem. 4 or below, leave it alone. It is a 4 below because it's a 0, right? So it's definitely below a 4. Leave it alone. I leave the 6 alone, and these two numbers become zeros. So that does round to 600. Okay, good. We're going to cross out number 4 because you guys have worked so hard. And that is it for our lesson 14 problem set. So remember, our I can statement today was that I can round to the nearest hundred. We absolutely did do that. I hope that we're feeling more confident with it. We used 2 strategies. We rounded to the nearest hundred on a vertical number line. And we also practiced with our poem, 5 or above, give it a shove, 4 or below, leave it alone. So I'm hoping that we're feeling confident with that, and we will continue on tomorrow. So super job, boys and girls. I will see you tomorrow.